as we await the former NASCAR racer, Danica Patrick.
That's going to be cool. Her podcast is doing very, very, very well. Podcast, that seems to be the wave of the future, Berno.
Apparently.
They told me.
Apparently. That's what they say.
Yeah, it's her new podcast, which really started back in August, is titled Pretty Intense, which, of course, makes sense because she's pretty, and it's intense. You can find it on Apple Podcasts or anywhere we would get your podcast. And like you mentioned, of course, she's very famous for being a big-time NASCAR race driver. She's the most successful woman in the history of American open-wheel racing. Her victory in the 2008 Indy Japan 300 is the only win by a woman in an Indy Series race. So she's the real deal. And again, the podcast is titled Pretty Intense. She's here, right?
She's on hold.
She's on the
Let's
line.
welcome in the great Danica Patrick. Good morning, Danica. Welcome to the Bernie and Sid Show.
Hi. Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning to you.
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Where were you? Are you in California this morning? Or?
Oh, not quite.
Right.
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh, good. Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, close.
Right. I should know that, of course. I did just see you on the sideline celebrating after your boyfriend threw a touchdown to beat the Lions on Monday night. And, of course, your boyfriend is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game, Aaron Rodgers. That does make you quite the power couple.
Okay.
So,
He is pretty amazing.
well, listen, Danica, your podcast name, Pretty Intense. Of course, that was the name of your book, which was a whole regimen on getting healthy. And is that what you pretty much focus on in your podcast?
Well, so I was promoting the book Pretty Intense at the beginning of 2018 last year, and I did a handful of podcasts to help promote it, and I thought, man, that was actually really fun. And so fast forward quite a ways. The end of my career came at the end of the year was the Indy 500, and and thinking about things to do next, I just wanted to have the ability to inspire people moving forward. I really was grateful for that role and wanted to keep being able to do that or have the opportunity to do that. And so that fits the bill. And then I just like to talk. So I thought, well, I like to talk.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Well, you're great at it. I mean, you're great on television. And, of course, now you're doing this. And I will say this, Danica, in your effort to continue to inspire people, which is how you promote your podcast. I love the diversity of your guest list. I mean, from A-Rod to Bobby Flay to Howie Mandel to Tony Kanaan, most recently Melissa Urban. Part of the reason why your podcast is great is the variety of people, the diverse guest list that you bring regularly to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm generally just very curious about the human story and stories about disappointment, frustration, adversity, low points in your life, and what did that feel like? What did that look like? What caused it, and what was the solution? Or how did you come out stronger, and what did you do? So that, for me, is applicable across all jobs, all kinds of people, all backgrounds. Everybody deals with that. Nobody is in some exclusive club where they don't deal with life challenges. So it kind of opens things pretty wide when it comes to the guests. I also really love to learn, so sometimes there'll be guests in there too. Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of fits into that role, but there's some other doctors and scientists that I've interviewed where it also falls into the educational side of things, which for me I just really love. I feel like I am hungry to learn more at 37 than at any other year of my whole life, including, of course, the ones where we were supposed to learn in school. So yeah, the guests are really, really varied. I mean, this week is Gloria Steinem, who is, she's about 80 years old, and she was on the very beginning of the feminism movement, and has some really simple thoughts on life, and is very wise. So she was really fun to interview as well.
Wow. Yeah, so Danica Patrick, the podcast is Pretty Intense. You can get it. That's the name of it, Pretty Intense. You can get it on Apple. And you talked about, of course, these stories of adversity, redemption, et cetera, et cetera. Danica Patrick, you're a successful NASCAR driver. I mean, and you must have had some low points yourself along the way. I mean, did you have them during your career while you were driving? Did you experience some of that you could share with us?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's there's too many to just start sharing here in this short little interview. But I think that I learn a lot about confidence. You learn a lot about. I think probably one of the biggest lessons is just when you're down, having to get back up again. But the real magic is finding what it is that you really, really love to do. Because if you don't really love what you're doing, then you're going to get beat down for sure because you don't really care. In the end, you really don't care. And so if you find something that you love to do, regardless of the situation, then you do keep getting back up. And that's what it takes. Yeah,
but you say
get up for that one more time.
Yeah, you say regardless. Like for example, Danica, my daughter Ava's a really good tennis player, really good. In fact, she trains in Harlem 4 times a week. But there's a lot of females, obviously. Serena Williams, Sharapova, they play tennis. You were in a sport that was all men, all the time, all men. And listen, no matter what anybody tries to, you know this better than anybody, we still live in a very misogynistic, chauvinistic society. We are in the midst right now of years and years of the Me Too movement. Forgetting about success on the track, how you did in North Carolina, just the daily chore, if you will, of dealing with guys in a male-dominated sport. Was that not brutal?
In the South.
Yeah. It was.
The beauty is I didn't really know any different, right? The beauty is I didn't know what it was like to be a guy and walk into the garage and have them look at me and then change over to the girl and be like, oh, that's different. I didn't know,
Right.
So ignorance was bliss to some degree. I think that I always make sure that I mention that everyone has to prove themselves and everyone's going to have doubters. That's just going to happen whether you're a girl or a guy. Now, did I have to deal with more of that? Did I have to prove myself more so? Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Did I have to deal with jerks on the track that made my life a lot more difficult than other people's? Maybe. Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's kind of what I dealt with, but I didn't know what it was like to be a guy, so it wasn't like I had some very, very easy to quantify difference between the two, and thank God I didn't because it might have been too much to handle,
Yeah, listening to you, Danica Patrick, whose podcast is called Pretty Intense on Apple. I mean, you're making a nice transition from the racetrack to broadcasting, essentially. I mean, maybe TV one day. Kelly Clarkson is there. You got Ellen and Oprah. I mean, you sound like you could morph into a position like that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice. It is a lot harder to interview than be interviewed, I will say. But
I've seen your podcast. You do a terrific job interviewing people too. So you're being humble.
Thank you. I've realized about myself, and this is something that I've come to just accept as I've gotten older, is that you want to be like. There's so much of the time we're looking, and we want to be like someone, whether it's you see a picture on Instagram or whether you see something somebody's doing, and you think, oh, I want to do that. You have to figure out what you're good at. And so what I've realized is that I'm a pretty serious person, and I don't know if I'm not the kind of person that can just be chipper and happy-go-lucky and bubbly and
Good.
Talking about surface conversation stuff. I'm a serious person, and so I like to laugh like a few times a year, but the rest of the time, just totally serious. And
that's good. That's what you got to be.
Once you know where your strengths and your weaknesses are, it makes things a lot easier. And once you accept them, it's a lot easier. So there was a phase where I was like, I want to have a cooking show. I want to have, TV sounds great. And it doesn't sound like a bad idea. It's just that it's got to be the right situation, the right treatment, the right kind of mission for the show. Like I think about like Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, and I think, oh, that's up my alley. But taking 5 minutes to show you how to make paleo cookies is probably not something that's as fun for me, right? So I've realized that about myself. So I think there's definitely an opportunity, and I think culturally, I think people are getting more and more curious about things that are a little bit deeper and a little more introspective and a little bit very meaningful things. And so I think there's a window for sure. but it's got to be the perfect scenario, and that's probably why for years and years and years there have been ideas for TV shows that have been thrown my way, and I don't like any of them because they don't fit my personality.
No,
there you go.
You are real.
No, listen. You got to be authentic, Danica. More than anything else, you've got millions and millions of fans because you were great at your sport. Above and beyond the fact that you're an attractive female, you were great at your sport, and you got to be authentic. That's the bottom line. Again, the podcast is continue to inspire. She's got great guests all the time, and she has been inspiring her whole career, and including now. We really enjoyed having you on, Danica. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.
Godspeed. Thank you, Danica.
Danica Patrick. Once again, check out the podcast. It's on Amazon. Continue to inspire.